The Marine Corps is going all in on the F-35 after decades of flying the AV-8B Harrier and the F/A-18 Hornet. Besides being stealthy, the jet has far more advanced sensing and data sharing tools than anything the Marine Corps has flown in the past. This means that marine tactical aviation is going to look a lot different than it did during the past 20 odd years of counterinsurgency. But the F-35 is as complicated as it is capable, and bringing a jet that advanced into the demolition derby of expeditionary warfare will take a profound shift in how the Marine Corps aviation community thinks about tactics and logistics. So today we're going to talk about how this is going to work, all thanks to David Roza, who wrote this one and talked to a lot of really smart people to get their insights, so you're gonna want to stick around. Though it's often overshadowed by its bigger siblings in the Air Force and the Navy, the Marine Corps has been flying combat aircraft since World War I. In typical Marine fashion, when the first of their aviators landed in France, they didn't even have aircraft, so they had to scrounge planes and engines from the British just to get into the fight. It was in the 1920s and 30s, over the jungles of Haiti, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic, that Marine aviators really started figuring out how aircraft could directly support ground troops. Without roads going through the mountainous terrain, aircraft became the best way of scouting ahead, and early air observers were trained infantry officers who could read the terrain and enemy forces like a grunt. These experiences in the Caribbean and Latin America convinced the Marines that aircraft were essential to supporting ground troops, which meant Marine aviators were here to stay. You see, in the Air Force, aircraft are a means of securing the skies, and in the Navy, they are a means of protecting the fleet. But in the Marine Corps, aviation is all about helping the grunts on the ground through reconnaissance, logistics, and close air support, or CAS. Really though, it's accurate to say that everything in the Marine Corps exists just to support the infantry. Marine CAS was still mostly in its infancy during World War II, but it really hit its stride in the Korean War as Marines honed their procedures. Even the Army was impressed, with one unnamed infantry colonel saying, "The Marines on our left were a sight to behold. Not only was their equipment superior or equal to ours, but they had squadrons of air and direct support. They used it like artillery. It was, 'Hey Joe, this is Smitty, knock the left of that ridge in front of Item Company.'" This tradition continued in Vietnam, where the Marines' aircraft and air command and control systems, both designed for close air support, proved fast and deadly during battles like the Siege of Khe Sanh and Hue City. And that was even before the Harrier, the world's first fighter jet that could take off and land vertically. We'll have a separate video all about the Harrier as we get closer to its official retirement in June, but suffice it to say that the jet proved its worth during the Gulf War and the global war on terror. Besides providing close air support, Marine tactical aircraft also scout the battlefield, direct artillery fire, and serve as communications relays. But no fighter has ever been as good at collecting and relaying information as the F-35. To get a better understanding of the jet's capabilities, we spoke with Dave "Chip" Burke, a retired Marine who, among many other things, was the first operational pilot to fly the F-35B and commanded the Marine Corps' first F-35B squadron. Fun fact, he is also the only Marine to ever fly the F-22 operationally, so he knows what he's talking about. Burke, or Chip if you want to go by his call sign, said that if he were to create a hierarchy of things you needed to be successful in warfare, information and situational awareness would be at the top. Basically, you can't hit or dodge what you can't see, unless of course you're world famous dodgeball champion Peter LaFleur. The F-35 is packed with radio, infrared, laser, and electro-optical sensors, and it can fuse all the information from those sensors and send it out to other troops who need it. Burke said it's almost startling how much information and awareness you have with the F-35, and the more information awareness you have, the better suited you are to provide the right type of support to the ground forces when they need it and how they need it. In other words, the F-35 acts like a giant floodlight for the fog of war. To give a sense of scale, the jet can compete with the kind of situational awareness you get with an AWACS, a much larger aircraft fully dedicated to gathering information. The F-35 doesn't replace the AWACS, Burke said, but it relieves some of the pressure on those platforms and gives commanders a lot more options. He said in most environments, if you didn't have an AWACS, you wouldn't even enter the area of responsibility. The F-35 is so broad in its spectral capability that it can operate super effectively without that support. The F-35's other big strength is that it can see a lot without itself being seen, which helps when rival powers like Russia and China have stacks of radar and anti-air missiles. The stealthy F-35 is built for that kind of environment, and if you combine stealth with the F-35B's ability to operate from really short runways, you get access to a lot more of the battlefield than you had with older aircraft. On top of all that, the F-35B can still drop bombs and fire missiles if that's what the mission calls for. The jet can carry a few bombs or missiles in its internal bays, though not nearly as much as something like an A-10 can carry on its wings. But the theory is that the F-35 stealth lets it access places older aircraft just can't get to. For all those reasons, the Marine Corps told us the F-35B is the centerpiece of its tactical aviation modernization effort because its sensor and data abilities help other Marines and the Joint Force become more deadly and better protected. The arrival of the F-35 is important because the Pentagon expects a war against Russia or China will look a lot different than the ones it's been fighting in the Middle East for decades. Marine pilots in the global war on terror could expect to jump straight into supporting ground troops with relatively few anti-air threats to worry about. But in a war with a peer or a near peer, they may have to clear the airspace before they can help out ground troops. That means they might have to suppress enemy air defenses with missiles or electronic warfare or shoot down enemy aircraft. And once the skies are clear, pilots may have to keep doing those types of missions or launch airstrikes as the enemy tries to counter the ground force. And eventually, the process will have to start all over again because US troops will probably need to keep moving to avoid being targeted by long-range missiles. The hope is that the F-35B can keep up because its short takeoff and vertical landing ability lets it hop between amphibious assault ships and cratered runways. Our friends at the War Zone got a taste of this last year during a training exercise off the coast of Southern California. A group of Marine F-35Bs fought off other F-35s and FA-18s to clear the way for Air Force C-17s to land an Expeditionary Marine Force at an airbase on San Clemente Island. Once the C-17s were down, the F-35Bs took turns coming down to get gas and then going up again to protect the airspace while the C-17s offloaded bombs, fuel, and maintenance kits. The next day, the F-35s used their all-seeing sensors to spot enemy ships and pass along targeting information to Hornet fighters acting as bomb trucks. On the third and last day, the C-17s came back to pick up the ground crews and the whole gang was on the move again. All this F-35B stuff sounds exciting, but we don't want to forget about the F-35C. While the Bs can take off and land vertically, the Cs come with a tailhook and are meant for aircraft carriers. The Marines are buying lots of the C version right now because they also operate carrier-based fighter squadrons that work alongside their Navy peers. In 2025, the Marine Corps announced that it would buy 140 F-35Cs, more than double the original tally of 67. Now that does come at the cost of the F-35B buy, which shrank from 353 jets down to 280. But when those C variants are not attached to a carrier air wing, they can still fly missions from land. Now you know why the Marine Corps is so into the F-35, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. If you've been following military news over the past 10 years or so, you know the F-35 has had a lot of bad press about how low readiness rates are. In 2023, the fighter was available for operations just 51% of the time on average across all the variants. That is well short of the goal of 65%. Even combat-coded squadrons struggled with just 61% availability. A Pentagon report that came out in March of this year wasn't much better, saying the operational suitability of the F-35 fleet continues to fall short of service expectations, though it did not provide updated statistics. Now for context, just because an aircraft has a mixed maintenance record does not necessarily mean it's bad. For example, the Harrier had perhaps an even worse reputation than the F-35, with one squadron calling it the Widowmaker because so many Marines Marines died flying it. Retired Marine Lieutenant General John M. Davis wrote in 2024 that a more consistent spare parts supply, better maintenance training, and smarter staffing of maintenance departments reversed the trend, and there hasn't been a fatal Harrier mishap since 2009. So there's hope for the F-35, but in some ways the jet is even more complicated than the Harrier. To get a better sense of how F-35 maintenance would work at an austere airfield, we talked with Kevin Klempner, an associate at the aerospace consulting firm Aerodynamic Advisory. Speaking for himself and not on behalf of his firm, Klempner pointed out that Marines in World War II had a hard time keeping aircraft running at austere airfields, even though the Wildcats, Dauntlesses, and other aircraft they were working with were far simpler than the jets they fly today. Perhaps the most extreme example was the Guadalcanal campaign, where Marines, sailors, and soldiers based at Henderson Field fought a months-long air war with hardly any resupply. That meant that ground crews at Henderson barely had any of the spare parts and tools they needed to keep their planes airworthy. As Navy Captain M.B. Gardner said at the time, the existing deficiencies which come to mind are, first, the lack of aircraft operating spares, particularly accessory spares. Time after time we've had planes that couldn't operate because we didn't have some very minor accessory part that we couldn't provide in any way. If maintaining a World War II era Wildcat was hard, imagine an F-35. It's kind of like comparing a classic Army Jeep to a software-dependent Tesla. The F-35 has a lot more sensors, a lot more specialized rare earth type materials, and a lot more software running the show. The specialized coatings and materials that make the jet stealthy is also a frequent driver of its readiness problems, according to the Pentagon. But it's the software that is really key, because it's how the F-35 keeps track of maintenance issues, figures out what spare parts it needs, and tailors its electronic warfare systems to meet the latest threat. But that software often needs to connect to networks behind the front lines, which is a problem when the enemy can block your connection. So how are you supposed to keep something like that running in a Henderson Field type of environment? We are not the first to think of these challenges, and the Marines may already have solutions to them. The Corps is using a mobile communications node called Menace made by Anduril, which is supposed to let forward deployed Marines keep secure connections to the rest of the force. Colonel John Dirk, commander of Marine Operational Test and Evaluation Squadron 1, told the War Zone last year, "As good as the F-35 is, we must have near real-time communications. Otherwise, as latency builds up, whatever the data we have is only as good as our last communications hit." Menace, he said, keeps Marines connected to share both tactical and logistical information, like ordering the spare parts you need to keep a jet running. Marines have also talked about firing smaller burst transmissions of data, or even using other aircraft as relay nodes so that they can report back on an F-35's health without as high a risk of being detected. The other half of this is that the Corps is trying to be more proactive about how it does aircraft maintenance. Colonel Richard Rusnak, who helps plan the future of Marine Corps aviation, told us that when he was coming up as a Harrier pilot, the maintenance posture was mostly reactive. In other words, they'd just wait for a part to break before they fixed it. But when that part broke on an exercise or deployment, they'd have to wait for spares to make the long journey out there. Now, the Marines want to use data, AI, machine learning, and all that other groovy algorithmic stuff to do predictive maintenance, where they can make really accurate forecasts of what parts they need. The idea is that supply lines are going to be unpredictable in future conflicts, so Marines need to be efficient when packing up spare parts. Rusnak said, "Our intent is to do maintenance smartly before the thing breaks, to take advantage of the plethora of sensors that are embedded in modern aircraft to do data analysis, and to predict when a part is going to fail, and then change it at a time of our choosing, so that we don't have to send that rescue package forward to go and repair that aircraft and bring it back home." We'll see how all this fancy technology shakes out, but at least some Marines seem to have a head start. When the War Zone observed that training exercise on San Clemente Island last year, they said all the F-35B squadrons showed an extraordinary ability to get maintenance done with far fewer tools and equipment than they would normally have at home station. They saw only one jet get grounded due to unexpected maintenance, but it was back flying in just a few hours. For his part, Colonel Rusnak also said forward deployed Marine F-35 squadrons maintain exceptional and eye-watering readiness rates. All of this is part of a wider plan to make Marine aviation faster at making tactical and logistics decisions. The way you do that, the Marine Corps says, is by achieving data dominance, the ability to sense, process, share, and act on information faster than an adversary. This is a big topic, but it basically means connecting all of the Marines' data buckets so that they are accessible and digestible for anybody who needs them. Think fewer games of telephone, less pouring through spreadsheets, and fewer instances of this one gadget can't share data with that other doodad. Instead, imagine having all of the data fusing together so you have, at your fingertips, all the answers you need, all the people you need to talk to, and all the buttons at your disposal so that you can quickly retask aircraft or reconfigure a mission. Marine Corps spokesperson Captain Jacob Suggs said the goal is simple: compress the time between sensing, deciding, and acting. Believe it or not, this is just the start of the Marine Corps' aviation transformation. There's also a plan to revamp ground support so that Marines can provide the fuel, power, and other infrastructure that aviators need at far-flung airfields more easily, like some remote airstrip in Iran or something. There are also plans to bring in more variants of unmanned aircraft that can serve as robot wingmen for fighters, escort transport aircraft, serve as sensor nodes, or just fly spare parts into austere airfields. All of that takes pressure off crewed platforms and gives you access to more dangerous battlefields. And what's a good jet when you need to fuse data with other platforms? You guessed it, the F-35, just as long as it can take the beating of a Marine Corps deployment. So let us know what you think about this in the comments, as always, because we really do value seeing what everyone else has to say about it, because we are not the end-all be-all of information. So drop your ideas in the comments. We appreciate that a lot. Alright, now it's channel update time, and as I mentioned before, David Roza wrote this script, and once again, he did a really great job. We wanted to bring him on because he's a real journalist who does real journalism, and so he worked on this for, once again, a few weeks and talked to a lot of people about it. As you can see, I mean, it's pretty cool he talked to Dave Burke. That guy's somewhat of a legend in Marine Corps aviation. So yeah, really great work from David. Gotta thank him again, give him a shout out in the comments. And of course, Savvy edited the video, and they always do a great job. It's just kind of expected from them at this point. We kind of take it for granted, but not really, but I mean, they just always do good work. So huge thank you to both of them, David and then the team at Savvy, because Savvy's not a person, it's a whole team. So thanks to everybody there. All right, I do have a correction to make. In that XM8 M7 video that I did, I said that they shaved a pound off of the suppressor. They did not shave a pound off of the suppressor. They shaved an inch off the suppressor and then like 1/10 of a pound. John B sent me an email with that correction, so thank you to John. I really appreciate it. Kind of a funny mistake. He said an order of magnitude off, and yeah, he's right, I made a mistake. So there's the correction. If you have your own, email me at kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com with correction in the subject line. That really helps me find it, and just like I did here, I'll mention it at the end of a video, because this is really the only way that we can fix the record. It's not like on print where you can issue a correction and be like, oh, we messed up. This is the only way I got, so that's what it is. Anyways, I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed. Thank you once again so much for this opportunity, all the support. I will see you next time.